It's important we look at the facts. Why?
Douglas Ross is sounding pretty scared.
I believe in independence.
And he clapped like a seal.
Hello, I'm Paul Hutcheon, political editor of the Daily Record, and welcome to the latest episode of Planet Holyrood, our new Scottish politics show. Joining me this week are Hannah Rodger, chief reporter of the Sunday Mail, and David Walker from the Scottish Daily Express. Now, there's still only one subject in Scottish politics that people are talking about, and that is the three-way SNP leadership contest that's turned into a bit of a bloodbath. The race kind of went nuclear earlier this week during the first TV debate when Kate Forbes launched a direct attack on Humza Yousaf's record in government, and we are still feeling the fallout from that. So, Hannah, I'll start with you. I think that there's only sort of one issue here, really, and it is, how do you think Kate Forbes's attacks on Humza will land with the SNP members who, after all, will select the new SNP leader?
Well, I mean, they're not going to land particularly well, I don't think. It's not really beneficial for anyone within a political party to be slagging off their own colleagues. And I think that Kate Forbes was pretty naive, actually, to do that. We saw today in FMQs that Douglas Ross completely capitalised on that and just spent the entire time talking about Kate Forbes's performance on the television and all the things that she said about Humza Yousaf. So, you know, she's given the Tories a bit of a gift there, but and that won't play well with the SNP members and voters, I guess, as well.
David, just coming to you, I mean, if you look at some of the polls, it seems that Kate Forbes is quite popular amongst the public, certainly more popular than Humza. We don't know much about the SNP membership in terms of what they think. I mean, what's your take on it? Do you think that she crashed and burned in the STV debate, or do you think that there might be a sort of residual sympathy for what she did, which was a pretty remarkable intervention, to put it mildly?
I think she might get plaudits on some of the SNP members, because at least she was completely honest, and the stuff she said was probably things that some SNP members think themselves. I mean, Humza Yousaf's record in government has been atrocious. I think anyone can see that. Only the naive SNP members cannot see that. So I think she played to the crowd. She's aiming for she's a change candidate for the SNP, and she's trying to prove that by basically torching the SNP that basically some members may think have failed to get independence. They've failed in government. Some people might think they've just failed in total. So I think she's done a good job. I think she's playing to the crowd. She's quite popular with the public. In the SNP membership, she's only a couple of percentage points behind Humza Yousaf. So I think it was the right tactic to do. I mean, her name was trending on Twitter. Any publicity is good publicity, I think, in some terms. So I think, obviously, I think it went. She done what she needed to do in that debate.
Hannah, I remember going back a while, the Scottish Tory leadership contest between Ruth Davidson and Murdo Fraser. And Murdo ran on effectively scrapping the party. And it was a real sort of hard medicine campaign. And the members didn't like it. So, I mean, to what extent do you think members of political parties, you know, like home truths? And to what extent do you think they like to have their tummies tickled and sort of told what they want to hear?
Well, as if they're like cats or something. Yeah. I mean, that's it's quite tricky one, because, you know, if you're a member of a political party, you are fundamentally going to think that your party is doing a better job than everyone else, I think. Otherwise, you know, you may not continue to be a member of that party for much longer. But I don't know, it is a tricky one. I mean, the thing that I keep thinking about with Kate Forbes, right, if she won this contest, how can she stand up in Holyrood and face, for example, Douglas Ross and As Sarwar and defend her own government when she has just slagged them off publicly on television? even like as journalists, it would be completely acceptable to say, well, NHS waiting times are the longest ever or whatever else. And she's acknowledged that herself. So it's going to be really hard for her to kind of come back from that unless she does almost, as you say, like a complete reset of the SNP and kind of tries to rebrand and make it a sort of a new SNP.
You used to cover Westminster, in the House of Commons. And so if you think of the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn and also the leadership of Liz Truss, Hannah, neither politician had the support of their parliamentary group. So, they had the support of the members, but they didn't have the support of their colleagues on a day-to-day basis, and they found that very, very difficult. So if you think of that in the context of this contest, a great many parliamentarians at Holyrood are backing Humza, not Kate. I think she's only got a handful of MSPs backing her.
Yeah, she's got the
hard would it be for her just to actually do the job?
Well, yeah, I was thinking about that as well before we came on today, and it's not just Jeremy Corbyn and Liz Truss. Obviously, they are kind of the most prominent examples, but I guess someone like Richard Leonard as well. I don't know if I'm right to say that or wrong, but I seem to remember he didn't have much parliamentary support. It was mainly from the kind of grassroots and the membership of Labour that kind of got him to where he was. And I think, we kind of saw the car crash. Well, we experienced the car crash of Scottish Labour under Richard Leonard, constant briefings and sort of trying to undermine the leadership. We saw that with Jeremy Corbyn, and we're seeing the impacts of that. It wasn't just, the impacts on Jeremy Corbyn as a person. It was the Labour Party was, I think, fundamentally damaged by that whole sort of era for the party, in terms of its reputation. And obviously under Keir Starmer, it is now kind of starting to make its way back up, but it really did kind of have quite a big impact. And then, Liz Truss, I mean, what can we say about Liz Truss? She didn't really have much of a chance to do anything. So I don't think she's that great a comparison. But we've seen by all these examples that if you try to govern in a party where you don't have parliamentary support, it's exceedingly difficult. And the other point I was going to make is with Kate Forbes, if she won the leadership and she became First Minister, the Green Party have already raised concerns about, working with the SNP under Kate Forbes and under Ash Regan. But where would that leave the SNP then when it was trying to pass anything or pass its budget? Could it still rely on support from the Greens for those things? Would they have to start negotiating with Labour or the Tories? So it does create all these sort of difficulties as well.
David, just to pick up what Hannah said there about the Greens. Now, one of their red line issues is that the Scottish Government has to challenge the UK Government on the Section 35 in relation to gender recognition reforms. Kate Forbes has basically said that she wouldn't be pursuing a legal battle, that she'd want to sort it out in Scotland. Do you think that if Kate wins, that is effectively this partnership between the SNP and the Greens over?
Yeah, I think they will completely blow up the Butte House Agreement. I think the Greens would just refuse to serve under Kate Forbes. They've already been strong, and they've claimed they're not backing anyone in the race, but it's quite obvious that Humza is the chosen one. So I think if Kate Forbes becomes the next First Minister, it could blow up the Butte House Agreement. But I think that's quite a good thing for Scottish democracy, because right now the SNP Greens coalition can push through any bill they want. The SNP and the Greens do deals in the background, they can push through any bill they want. If the Greens leave government, SNP will have to actually be more friendly towards Lib Dems, Labour, be friendly towards them, offer them a few bones. It means it won't just be a purely SNP Green agenda, which is only good for the people of Scotland, because right now, Fergus put it best, the tail is wagging the dog. The Greens are pushing through some quite dangerous legislation. The DRS scheme has only got support by the majority of the SNP. Every other party says pause it. The Greens are adamant that'll go through. I think it's only a good thing, I think, for Scotland if the Greens do fall out of government.
Anna, do you agree? It'd be good for Scottish democracy if this partnership ended?
I don't know. I don't know if I can really say if it would be good or bad for democracy. I mean, I don't think that's really my job to say that, and I don't know what the answer is. But I think that it would shake things up. It would shake things up. It would make things a bit more interesting. But ultimately, even if they weren't in a formal agreement, I don't know. I mean, they weren't before, and they still managed to kind of get things through just by negotiating with the Greens. So I don't know. It depends on how much the Greens would want to work with, whether formally or informally, whoever wins the leadership contest. But yeah, in terms of democracy, I don't know.
David, just something that you said about the tail wagging the dog. Is that really the case? I mean, like the deposit return scheme, that was the SNP would be pushing ahead with that regardless of whether the Greens were in government. Nicola Sturgeon was very much committed to reform of the GRA. I mean, other than that, I don't really see any sort of evidence of some massive Green influence in government. Is the Green influence not vastly overstated?
I mean, the two things you state there is both things where it could have a massive effect on the public life anyway. So I think the influence is there to be seen just based on those two policies. I mean, the DRS scheme.
My point is, though, wouldn't the SNP have just pushed those regardless of whether the Greens were side by side with them in government? Because they seem to be committed to them independent of the Greens.
I think that without the Greens, I think the DRS scheme would be paused by now. I generally think it would be paused if they didn't have the backing of the Greens. The GRA thing is a quite complicated topic because obviously MSPs voted it through. It's just the public who seemingly have taken dislike to it. So it's a tough question, but I think you can see a Green influence on those two policies in particular.
Nah, I disagree. I'm afraid. I think that the whole Green thing was, the Green sort of formal, what do they call it, Paul? The formal cooperation agreement?
Cooperation agreement, something like that.
To me, that was basically the SNP's attempt at essentially greenwashing the Scottish government. I don't think that, as you say, like those two things, the DRS and GRA, both of them would have been going ahead anyway with the Greens or without the Greens. They just kind of also support them. And I think, again, it was one of those things where the Scottish government maybe want to appear like they're, progressive and the first to do certain things. But actually the influence of the Greens, I don't think it's there, really.
Hannah, sticking with you, obviously Kate Forbes had a terrible first few days, particularly over the same-sex marriage comments.
Yeah.
Her campaign nearly died in a ditch there and then. The perception is that her comments in the STV debate may have backfired, but she's still standing. I mean, do you think that she can still win this?
Yeah, actually I do. Bizarrely. I mean, I think if she won it, she, like we were saying, she wouldn't have support of the elected members of the party, so that would be very, very tricky. But, if you look at like the polls, there's an interesting poll, when was it out? Last week, and it was by Savanta Comres, maybe, and it was of SNP members specifically. And Kate Forbes was, she was very closely behind Humza, I'm pretty sure. But the interesting thing about that was Humza, I'm sure, had 31% of the vote, and the people who were undecided were 32%. So that kind of tells you that, there is a big proportion of the SNP membership who aren't sure yet. But also, I think the interesting thing is with this leadership contest, the candidates don't even really know who the membership are. Like, they don't know the overall views of the membership because it hasn't been tested for, 20 odd years, and the party has completely changed in that time. We've had the 2014 referendum. We got, we saw a huge surge in SNP membership from then, and it's kind of changed since then as well. So I think they're not even sure really who it is that they're pitching to and who they're trying to appeal to. So that's what makes it very interesting. And when you kind of look at these polls, it kind of tells you that it's quite a wide kind of spread of views, and it's not necessarily, if we see Kate Forbes, who's not getting on particularly well in these media debates and things like that, it doesn't mean that everything's lost and that Humza's a dead cert by any means.
David, how about you? Is Kate still in the hunt?
I generally think Kate Forbes might actually end up being the next First Minister of Scotland. She's obviously breathing in Humza's neck in the polls. She's doing... It's quite remarkable because after those first 2 days of interviews, I actually thought, that's it. The contest is done. It's Humza's to lose. Humza could have stayed quiet and we'd have came out on top. But she's bounced back really well. She's positioned herself as she's going to come to this. She's become First Minister. She's going to rip up some of Nicola Sturgeon's ideas. She's going to make sure work with businesses, make sure Scotland becomes more economically friendly. I think she actually. Everyone seems to think Humza's on this tide to win. I think Kate Forbes will win it. I think Humza's reputation as a cabinet minister will come back to bite him heavily in the end. I think he is seen in most quarters as incompetent. Kate Forbes is seen as competent, but with some sketchy views on progressive topics, which some SNP members think is a red line for them. But I think Kate Forbes will be the next First Minister of Scotland.
Okay, let's just look beyond the impact of the contest on the SNP, and let's look at a very interesting opinion poll from Redfield and Winton, which was carried out between the 2nd and 5th of March, and it's a Scottish Westminster poll. Now, I think some context is required here. From memory, if you go back to the 2019 general election, the SNP polled about 45%, and I think Labour under Corbyn polled about 18%. So I think there was roughly a 27-point gap between Labour and the SNP. Now, this new poll sees the gap down to 10 points. So the SNP in 39 and Labour on 29. Hannah, is the momentum with Labour here?
Well, yes and no, right? Because if you look at that, it actually shows that the Tories, well, compared to the last time they did this poll, which was the end of last year, the Tories have actually gone up 6 points, which I don't really understand. But, sorry, what was your initial question?
Yeah, so has Labour now got the momentum? The gap was 27 points at the 2019. Now the gap is down to 10.
Yeah.
If you're in Labour, you got a smile on your face?
Yeah, I think so. Under Corbyn, as we were saying earlier, there was a lot of damage done. You did see that surge in, what was it called? Corbyn mania or Corbyn?
Some dreadful phrase, yeah, something like that.
Something like that, Corbyn mania. You saw that, and then everyone kind of went, "Oh, what are these kind of views about?" And I'm not sure if I quite like. Oh, sorry, I think we've made a mistake. So everyone kind of backed off of Labour. But I think Keir Starmer offers a bit more stability for the Labour Party. He might not be everyone's cup of tea. He might be seen as less sort of radical and sort of. Yeah, radical and sort of activist-led. He doesn't give off that approach. He's kind of like a sort of reliable uncle, is how I've heard Keir Starmer described before.
But in an age of chaos, that's what folk are looking for. They're looking for
a reliable uncle.
Yeah, rather than lazy uncle like Boris Johnson.
Well, exactly. Boris Johnson is like the crazy kind of uncle or cousin that you don't really see that often, but you're not bothered about that. And yeah, Keir Starmer's like this reliable, stable uncle. And yeah, I think we have seen that before. It's like, it's the same as with Donald Trump and Joe Biden to a certain extent. They had like the chaos in America of the Donald Trump era, and everyone was, I guess, quite relieved to have a kind of slightly boring but reliable Joe Biden come in and just not cause any fuss and just get on with the government. And I think, even though Rishi Sunak maybe has hope that he would offer that to the Tories, I don't think we're seeing enough of an uplift because of the damage that Boris Johnson and the Partygate saga has done to the Tories. I don't think we're seeing him make that same effect, whereas Labour under Keir Starmer is a bit further on in that process compared to Boris and Rishi Sunak. So yeah, I think they are making headway. And then obviously we've got the Scottish Labour complete change of leadership as well. So you're seeing that similar sort of effect. I wouldn't say Richard Leonard was like a crazy uncle or anything like that, but just Richard Leonard sort of, I guess, was not as inspiring to some people as an ass might be. So yeah, that's all I will say. I'll stop rambling, but yeah.
David, do you think that the tide has turned for Labour, or do you think that it's?
I mean, I think.
Do you think it's like mid-term blues, and that explains the sort of dip in SNP support? I
mean, all the opposition parties have to do is just stand there and just watch the bin fire that is the SNP leadership contest and go, well, I mean, we can't be any worse than these three candidates, can we? I think Scottish Labour has done very well and positioned themselves as like, look how bad these three people are. Why is this the three potential First Minister choices? And I think they've done well. I think the Tories, they've done exactly the same, and I think they've got a good tactic, is they can just say, we'll stand up for the union. The SNP independence, latest independence poll, puts independence at quite a not a record low, but quite a low, so they can come in and say, like, look at Labour will protect the union, we'll protect the union, like Sir Keir Starmer will make a deal for the SNP to give them a referendum. So I think the Tories could surge. I think the next general election could actually be quite a close three horse race in Scotland between the Tories, Labour and the SNP if it continues on the trajectory it's going on right now. So
you say the Tories could surge in Scotland. What would be the sort of conditions that would lead to that happening?
I think
I'm sceptical, but please take the floor and explain.
I was going to say pigs flying might be the conditions required in that situation.
I mean, politics is a fast-moving world. I think if the SNP continue on the trajectory, they'll be going downhill heavily. Labour will try to pick up some of their supporters, but if Labour go too soft on the SNP voters to try to get SNP voters in, I think Tories will be like, well, Labour are trying to entice voters in, they'll give you a referendum, we won't do that, we'll protect the union. I think the Tories have a chance of actually doing it. I wouldn't say they'll be second or first, but they've got a chance of running it quite close for second behind Labour, and obviously the SNP will probably still win most seats.
Who knows, maybe if Douglas Ross becomes really, really popular, the Tories will do extremely well.
I mean,
just a thought. I know it's a big if, but who knows?
Could happen, yeah.
You don't think that they're just like, headed for deep third place, David?
No, I reckon they'll finish third, but I reckon it'll be closer than what people. I think there's like a silent amount of people in Scotland who do still quite like the Tories, like up in Douglas Ross, because they obviously they still don't mind the Tories down in Dumfries and Galloway. Obviously don't mind the Tories either. I think there's a chance they'll finish third, but I think they might be closer than what people expect them to be.
Okay. Let's turn to tweet of the week. I think we'll start with you, Hannah. We're looking for our expert Henrik to put it up on screen. Here it is. Do you want to talk us through this? Obviously, this is a tweet by former record favourite Torquil Crichton, who is now going to be a Labour candidate in the Western Isles. Yeah,
so our old colleague Torquil, always kind of quick with his remarks, and he tweeted this on Tuesday night after the first televised SNP leadership debate, And, you know, I just thought it was quite funny because clearly, well, a couple of angles actually. I think the SNP, we're not used to seeing the SNP publicly attacking each other, and therefore their press office doesn't entirely know how to handle that. So, yeah, thank you, Torkel. I thought that was very funny.
Yeah, and I was going to say, Hannah, I mean, how much do you think the SNP press office is struggling just now?
I think the SNP press office is struggling. Yeah, I think they are probably struggling quite a bit because they've got, you know, Nicola Sturgeon leaving. There are various investigations going on into internal party things that they'll be getting annoying questions about all the time. And then you've got candidates kind of try to stab each other in the back. So yeah, it's not an easy time to be an SNP press officer, but yeah, they chose to do that job. So,
and I think they keep scoring own goals as well. Like when they refused that journalists into First Hutcheon, like I don't understand where that came from, or like why they thought, oh, good idea, we'll just lock journalists out of First Hutcheon. We won't even live stream it. We'll just like lock journalists out. Nothing will happen. I don't get where that strategy came from. I just thought I put 2 pence in there. I just thought it was just a wild strategy to have.
Yeah, it was a weird strategy though, because all the candidates said, "Wait a minute, no, we're actually fine with it." So yeah, you're right. Who made that decision and why? Because surely they mustn't have asked any of the candidates for their opinion before they announced that.
Indeed. So David, over to you. What's your tweet of the week?
So obviously the SNP leadership contest has been hilarious so far in terms of just absolutely bonkers sound bites. I was going to choose Ash Regan's independence thermometer, but I thought that's got quite a lot of press recently. And the OFO is a bonkers idea. I think this one kind of matches up with that. Basically, Kate Forbes saying that SNP's the voters who are like plumbers, farmers, electricians should basically, when out on the job, just tell people they're doing a job for, like, yeah, by the way, what do you think about the Tories in England? Shite, eh? Sorry, rubbish, eh? Why don't you vote independence? It's a weird thing because, like, if you have a plumber fixing a sink, would they give you mates rates discounts if you sign a contract saying, like, I will vote SNP in the next election? Will you get mates rates discounts? Or just there's so much like options that brings to us, I think.
I know. I think it'd be a real pain in the neck if someone came around to fix your toilet or oven and then they started to bang on about the SNP's currency policy. You know, mate, do one, will you? Got a whole job to do.
Maybe John Swinney might like to turn his hand to a bit of plumbing. You know?
Well, he's more of a bank manager than a plumber, isn't he?
I know, but I'm saying like John Swinney coming into your house, fixing your sink and convincing you about, you know, Scottish currency. I think he would be more convincing than just an average plumber.
Well, he's looking for a new job given he's leaving government, so maybe you could reskill.
That's what I mean.
Maybe
Hannah, good week, bad week, who are you picking, who are you putting in the hot seat?
Good week. Who has had a good week? Do you know what? Well, am I allowed to have two?
Yeah, on you go.
Right. First one is Nicola Sturgeon. She's had a great week. She's been at the Glasgow Women's Library. She's been reading books. She's just totally like, yeah, I'm done with this, so doesn't really matter. You know, and you can see that in FMQs today. She's just loving it. Like, she's so relaxed. She's just, you know, she doesn't really care what Douglas Ross says. But my other person who's had a good week is also Douglas Ross. I think that actually he's not done too badly in terms of FMQs today. I would say he nailed FMQs today. He just totally skewered it and made really good points. And I think he came across like pretty well. So that's my good week. Oh, bad week. Basically anyone who's running to be the next First Minister.
Can I just say, I agree with you. Douglas Ross is very good at FMQs, but I am amused that he has to basically say his attack lines twice because you get the inevitable protesters. So, like, the First Minister gets sight of what his attack line is. Then he has to go through it all over again, which is... how about you, David? Good week, good week, bad
Good
week?
week for me, I think, is Alistair Jack. Obviously, Scotland's favourite Tory, as he's coined in some aspects of it. I mean, he's got a peerage from Boris Johnson reportedly, but the main thing that has done well from this week is the whole deposit return scheme war. Basically, last week, the Scottish Greens and SNP were calling for his head, saying, "Oh, resign, you've misled Parliament because you've said that the Scottish Government haven't applied for this the internal market exemption." And then Monday, what happens? Oh, Scottish Government officially apply for the internal market schemes. I mean, he stayed quite quiet for all of it. He just kept repeating the same lines. They called for his head, and he's came out the other side, and he's still obviously survived it. Bad week for me. It's kind of opposite to what Hannah said. My bad week is actually Nicola Sturgeon. I mean, when your own cabinet member goes on live TV and basically says you've been mediocre for the last 4 years, that's kind of a bad thing to say, is it? Not obviously Humza was defender, but obviously you can't have your own cabinet minister going on live TV to torch your record in the last few years. So I think a bad week for Nicola Sturgeon, in my opinion.
Great stuff. Well, I think that wraps it up for another week. Thanks to Hannah and David for their insights. I hope that you enjoyed Planet Holyrood, and please join us again next week for what will no doubt be the latest instalment of SNP melodrama. So thanks again.
It's important we look at the facts. Why? Why?
Douglas Ross is sounding pretty scared.
I believe in independence.
And he clapped like a seal.